Anyway, so let's read this Southern Poverty Law Center article on Moorish citizens so we can get a overarching understanding of where they're coming from as opposed to other sovereign citizens. I was going to say normal sovereign citizens, but no sovereign citizens are normal. But there's like a baseline sovereign citizen, and then Moorish citizens believe a lot of the same stuff, but for different reasons. So let's take a look at this. Moorish sovereign citizens. The Moorish sovereign citizen movement is a collection of independent organizations and lone individuals that emerged in the early 90s as an offshoot of the anti-government sovereign citizen movement, which believes that individual citizens hold sovereignty over and are independent of the authority of the federal and state governments. Members of the Moorish citizens, called Moors, have come into conflict with federal and state authorities over their refusal to obey laws and government regulations. Recently, Moorish citizens have engaged in violent confrontations with law enforcement. They've also been known to retaliate against government authorities through financial means, a process called, quote, paper terrorism. Moorish sovereigns espouse an interpretation of sovereign doctrine that African Americans constitute an elite class within American society with special rights and privileges that convey on them a sovereign immunity, placing them beyond federal and state authority. Now, some of these include... hold on, I gotta refresh my... where is that? Pop out chat. So some sovereign citizens, and this is going to depend, there's some overlap with this and the... Black Israelite movement. I don't know if you've heard of that. Certain people have this conspiracy theory that secretly, all along, Africans or African Americans are secretly the descendants of the Hebrews from the Bible and not, the people that we would consider Jewish ethnically. This is something some weird celebrities have espoused. Of course, there's no evidence for this. It's kind of like when Mormons claimed that Native Americans were secretly Hebrews. Like, it's just a thing. It's just people wanting to claim that they're Hebrews, right? Is that the Moorish thing? You mean Mormon? That's a Mormon thing. Mormons believe that Native Americans were Hebrew, or at least some of them. In its own words. Quote, your straw... oh god, we're doing the straw man thing. Quote, your straw man is a non-living, non-breathing, fictitious corporate entity that has the same name as you, except in all capital letters. It's ultimately a trust that is brought into existence with your signature. Lawfully, you are the executor, beneficiary, administrator, and the stockholder of the United States Corporation. Moorish American Resource School. They, of course, have, websites and stuff. Here's their Facebook page. Moorish American Resource School. And they're selling products. All that kind of stuff. Bad information. They also like fezzes, which, hey, I get that. Who doesn't like a cool hat? I get that one. Quote, political thieves, usually descendants of European colonists, operate upon the American continents, have by outright criminality taken unlawful leave and advantage of the usurped seats of government, and have polluted the sanctity of their official oaths to uphold the Constitution and treaties, and are unlawfully violating the natural people. That's Taj Tariq Bey saying that. Next one is, everything that will be stated is based on the de jure law, which seems redundant. De jure kind of means like under the law, so you're kind of saying law under the law, and not just Admiralty Maritime, oh god, de facto legalities such as statutes, code, rules, regulations, ordinances, policies, etc. Any color of law that contradicts the Constitution for the United States of America is null and void and has no withstanding. And of course the sick means that's like a direct quote, even though it doesn't really make sense. Quote, you are not to pay taxes to foreigners who are doing business within the borders of your ancestral estate. And that's where we get into the people who believe that Oh boy, this is complicated. So there are some Moorish citizens that believe that the true Native Americans are African American. Does that make sense? They believe that there was a country within what is now the United States called Morocco, which is a different entity than the Morocco that is over in, like, Africa, right? And they believe that this Morocco is where black people from the United States are actually from, and not that they have been stolen from Africa during the slave trade, during chattel slavery. So pretty fucked up. And they also believe that this basically gives them the right to not follow the law of the United States government. Now, putting aside, of course, the fact that all of that's untrue, Morocco was not a country in the United States, and they get some of this from a treaty that was signed with Morocco and the 13 colonies. And I think it was a treaty dealing with actual maritime piracy and stuff, that they were going to, like, help each other out, because there was piracy along trade routes that affected both of them. But for some reason, certain Moorish citizens have taken this to mean that Morocco was not only a country across the sea, but it was somewhere domestically within the United States, and that secretly that's where people who are descended from people from Africa today, they aren't descended from people from Africa. They believe that they're descended from native black people from America. Of course, all of this is ridiculous and isn't true. They believe that basically history as we understand it is a lie. Not really. But even aside all of that, the thing is, even if all of that was true, which again, let me reiterate for the 50th time, it is not, it wouldn't change the fact that you are still under the jurisdiction of the United States government today. It wouldn't change a single thing. So, kind of ridiculous. Anyway. Origins. The origin of the Moorish citizen movement are difficult to ascertain and often misunderstood. According to law enforcement sources, Moorish sovereign citizens are loosely affiliated with the Moorish Science Temple of America, and trace their roots to the creation of the MSTA in 1913 and its founder, Noble Drew Ali, aka Timothy Drew. Some Moorish sovereigns are known to affiliate with the MSTA, but certainly not all MSTA chapters are linked with the sovereign citizens. In fact, the MSTA issued a statement in July 2011 condemning sovereign citizen practices and denying any association with radical or subversive Moorish citizen groups. Further, according to Mark Pitcavage, a leading expert in the sovereign citizen movement, quote, Moorish sovereign citizens emerged in the mid-1990s on the East Coast when some people began to merge sovereign citizen ideas with some of the beliefs of Moorish Science Temple, a religious sect dating back to 1913. In his article, The Washita Nation and Moorish Sovereign Citizens, Pitcavage writes, quote, after the Empress, e.g. Verdian C. Turner Gostin retired, the original Washita group fell apart, replaced with a variety of different groups and individuals taking up the Washita Nation mantle. So today there is not just one Washita Nation, but many, making it one of the most important wings of the Moorish sovereign citizen movement, he says. The Washita Nation appears to be the earliest sovereign citizen group that began merging Moorish identity and heritage with sovereign citizen concepts. In her book, Return of the Ancient Ones, published in 1993, Verdian C. Turner Gostin, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing her name, Empress of Washita Nation, asserts that Moors were among the earliest settlers to America and the rightful owners of all lands ceded to the United States in the Louisiana Purchase. Clint D. Nelson Bay writes in the book's preface, quote, the book begs you to start asking questions and do your own personal research regarding your Moorish history, and then allow your mind to connect the two, end quote. And there's another quote. You can't fool a Washita as we, the original Moors of, oh god, I'm gonna butcher this, but here we go. Dugda Mundayaya, Bugda Moundya, like the girl in Thor 2 trying to say Mjolnir. Meow meow. Gostin writes on page 202, quote, we must realize who we are and why we are doing this. and how we have been preserved for what special purpose, end quote. Gauston later writes on page 203, quote, "My people were here when the white man came to this African continent. They were the Murs, in later years called the Moors, from the land of Tadmor. Other examples of Moorish sovereign citizen groups include the Free Moorish Nation, the United Mawshank Nation of Nurs, the Nubian Nation of Moors, and the Al-Moroccan Empire. These groups primarily operated through the southeastern, northeastern, and midwestern United States." So what do they think Native Americans are? That's a good question. I have no idea. Hopefully this article will mention it. It also sucks because they're erasing their West African heritage and West African cultures are cool. Yeah. It's sad all around. Because, like, oh yeah, black people have been treated like absolute garbage by the United States, as have actual Native Americans. Pretty much anyone who isn't like a white Protestant dude. Treated like trash by the United States for most of its history. But, like, coming up with conspiracy theories about it isn't helping the situation, right? What you want to do is accept history as it is, and accept that you've been mistreated and why you've been mistreated, because it was mostly a racial issue, and then trying to come up with ways in the present to alleviate the problems stemming from said issues, right? So we do have systematic racism in this country. We have issues, with policing and housing and employment and all sorts of stuff that are echoes of, like, Jim Crow and chattel slavery and all sorts of things. But coming up with some made-up story about how you're the real Native Americans isn't going to help your situation at all. In particular, the Nubian Nation of Moors likely played a key role in spreading Moorish sovereign citizen ideology to other parts of American cities. In her book, The Nubian Nation, Black Spirituality and State Control, Susan Palmer writes, in mid-June 99, several Montana freemen came to the town Eatonton, Georgia. One of them introduced himself to the, oh god, why did I pick this when all the names are so hard for me to pronounce? Nubians as a common law judge. He moved into Tamaree to work with them. Excuse me. So, when the Nubian group's compound in Eatonton, Georgia was raided by federal, state, and local enforcement officials on May 8, 2002, and essentially shut down, many Nubian Nation members who were now knowledgeable of sovereign citizen tradecraft were displaced and fled to other areas of the country, bringing with them Moorish sovereign ideology, which is very interesting that this, like, ideology and group basically was all part of one almost cult-like center, and then when the FBI came and raided them, they moved all over the country and ended up spreading the belief to other people. It's interesting. I'd imagine there's some sort of interesting, like, case study that could be done on, like, cult beliefs and how they spread when members of the cult leave and go to different places. Moorish sovereign citizens espouse an anti-government doctrine which its members claim to be part of a sovereign nation. For some who identify themselves as Moorish, or something similar, there is a belief that a 1787 treaty, fictitious, between the United States and Morocco grants them immunity from U.S. law. Others, such as the Washita Nation, may falsely claim to occupy United Nations Indigenous Peoples Seat 215, there's no such thing, and create their own birth certificates, passports, driver's licenses, and vehicle registrations. Moorish sovereigns believe their status as members of a sovereign nation imparts immunity from federal, state, and local authorities. They use this perceived immunity to justify refusing to pay taxes, buy auto insurance, register their vehicles, and to defraud banks and other lending institutions. Many Moorish sovereigns also profit by selling bogus registration, licensing, and insurance documents on websites promoting Moorish sovereign beliefs and doctrines. In several instances, this belief in immunity from legal authority has led some Moorish sovereigns to initiate violent confrontations with law enforcement. So basically, some of these people believe that they can operate similar to how some tribes do on reservations, where they can do sort of their own, because, on tribal land, the little of it that there is, You can have certain laws and stuff that are somewhat different from the United States because their territory is considered their own, right? Due to treaties and stuff that were signed. And of course, those have been chipped away at over time, and that's a whole other story for a different day. But more or less, if you are on a reservation, it is possible that in some places you can get a driver's license from the government or the whatever of the reservation that might be recognized by the states. But arbitrarily, Moorish citizens believe that they can do the same, claim themselves to be indigenous peoples, and then have those same rules apply to themselves and say that they are a sovereign, part of a sovereign nation within the United States, a Moorish nation, and then issue their own legal documents, which they do not have the right to do. Moorish sovereign citizens often play an emblem that consists of scarlet-red rectangular banner or flag with a 5-pointed green star located just left of center. In Moorish legal filings, Moorish sovereign citizens refer to themselves with a series of Africanized names that incorporate the words Bey or El, or a combination of the two. Moorish sovereign citizen movement has no The Moorish sovereign citizen movement has no unified leadership. Most operate as individuals and get information about Moorish sovereignty online or from paid seminars taught by sovereign gurus. In contrast, Moorish sovereign citizen groups generally are small, consisting of a dozen followers, many of whom are nominally led by one or two charismatic individuals who profit from the promotion of Moorish doctrines and the preparation and sale of bogus legal documents to those embracing their Moorish nationality or heritage. So cults, basically. There are some places around the country with little tiny sovereign citizen cults. Moorish citizen cults, rather. There are no reliable figures available on the number of active Moorish sovereigns. A recent survey of Moorish sovereigns-related social media sites consistently indicated about 3,000 to 4,000 followers. Furthermore, an official website for submitting petitions to Congress featured a Moorish American sovereignty petition, which had over 6,200 petitioners. Self-declared Moorish sovereigns have also been arrested in all regions of the country and many major cities within the United States. Moorish sovereign citizens have loose ties with the MSTA, which has caused confusion among the media and law enforcement who mistakenly link both groups together. Moorish sovereign citizens have also been known to affiliate with other black nationalist groups as well, with criminal organizations. Moors have participated in rallies, conferences, and other events with the groups such as the Blood Street Gang, the Latin King Street Gang, the New Black Panther Party. I don't necessarily have a problem with the Black Panthers. The Nation of Islam and Black Hebrew Israelites. There's the connection to the Black Hebrew Israelites, which we talked about earlier. According to law enforcement sources, areas of common interest between black nationalists and Moorish sovereigns include their African American heritage, assertions of entitlement to certain geopolitical areas, targeting of police and other government officials, violent reaction to incidents of perceived police brutality, and engaging in crimes of opportunity. NLID says, reservations are pretty tricky. There are 3 around where I live, Red Lake, Leech Lake, and White Earth. Law enforcement jurisdiction differs, but they still work together. The same is true for courts. With the emergency of rehab, drug courts, there's starting to be more cooperation. Yeah, that about makes sense. The new Black Panthers are bad? Okay. I didn't know much about them. I only know about the old Black Panthers and how they got shit on by the police. Oh, are they, like, literally, like, black nationalists the same way that, like, certain white nationalist groups are, like, white nationalists? I didn't know that. Gotcha. That sucks that they took the name, then. What a bummer. Emergence, not emergency. Gotcha. Since emerging in the early 90s, Moorish sovereigns have no known involvement in paramilitary training and activities. They do, however, conduct training seminars and videotaped classes that teach financial scams and frauds common to sovereign groups. Members also have been known to wear paramilitary-style uniforms with patches of the Moorish flag, and to operate vehicles modified to resemble police patrol cars, equipped with a police insignia on the door panels and light bar. Hylian Derp says, the specific, quote, New Black Panther Party is terrorist. There are other forms that aren't shitty. Okay, good. That sucks that they took the name, though, because that's a rad-ass name. The old members fought to take the name back, but they lost? That sucks. Any, like, ethno-nationalist group, not good. Not a fan. Eccleston says, when I was growing up, I was taught the Black Panthers were a black supremacist group. The originals weren't. The originals were not. Moorish sovereigns sustain themselves by selling bogus legal documents, fraudulent auto insurance forms, fake license plates, counterfeit passports, and various other documents. They also save money by practicing tax avoidance schemes or tax fraud. They have perpetrated large-scale financial fraud, including creating false money orders, fraudulent cashier's checks, and bogus financial instruments. In some areas, their fraudulent activity is part of a larger sovereign practice called the redemption doctrine. Excuse me. It declares that Moors, like all sovereigns, can incorporate themselves, thereby allowing individuals to use themselves as personal assets worth tens of millions of dollars. I think that's in reference to the sort of redeeming the straw man thing that they used to, or not that they used to, that sovereign citizens believe they can do. They believe that basically there's a paper identity that is you, that has an account with the IRS worth millions of dollars, and if you do certain things, you can, like, gain access to that account. All fiction. Moorish sovereigns have recently engaged in violent actions such as shootings, bank robberies, murders, and armed confrontations with law enforcement. A few Moorish sovereigns have also been reported to possess illegal firearms as well as fraudulent concealed weapons permits. Overall, Moorish sovereigns have not shown widespread interest in deploying explosive or incendiary devices. Even so, a small number of Moorish sovereign citizens pursued more violent paths and participated in terrorist plots. In 1993, the only American-born suspect connected with the plot targeting New York City landmarks, Clement Rodney Hampton L., including the successful bombing of the World Trade Center, espoused Moorish ideology. Also, some members of the Liberty City 7 terror cell in Miami, Florida, adhered to Moorish ideology. Federal, state, and local law enforcement have encountered Moorish sovereigns committing a wide range of minor or white-collar criminal activity, including traffic violations, house squatting, tax fraud, financial scams, and violations of government regulations. Of further concern, Moorish sovereigns have recently engaged in violent retaliation against police, court officers, and other civil authorities beyond the mere filing of false liens against them and other forms of harassment. Some Moorish sovereign citizens also have been known to target their own for financial scams and other criminal activity. Criminal activity and violence. Like most sovereign citizen groups, Moorish sovereign ideology breeds anti-government, anti-law enforcement sentiments through its radical ideology, which can inspire members to intimidate, threaten, harass government officials and law enforcement officers. Moorish sovereigns are also known to produce fraudulent legal documents which they use against perceived enemies, especially publicly elected officials they view as corrupt. Several recent incidents highlight Moorish sovereigns' propensity for violence and criminal activity. On September 11, 2017, Marcel A. Walton, a self-proclaimed Grand Sheik of a Moorish temple in Chicago, was sentenced to nearly 6 years in federal prison for causing the IRS to issue more than $3.2 million in fraudulent tax returns. Walton filed similarly fraudulent returns for 17 other people on the false pretense that temple members were entitled to remuneration from the United States government for its purported use of Moorish lands. So they also claim, like, the United States is using land that once belonged to my ancestors, therefore we're going to charge you for using it, even though they have no evidence that the land that they're talking about was ever owned by their ancestors, right? These aren't Native Americans that have some sort of moral case, and I'm saying moral, not legal, because that's a complicated issue, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to step in there. But you could argue that someone who is of Native American descent has the moral case that, hey, this land was taken from my people, I would like some compensation for that. Okay? Again, not touching the legal. But someone who claims to be a Moorish citizen, someone who was claiming that their ancestors were indigenous to the land prior to, like, white people, which is how they are framing it, not me. No, you don't have a case for that, because there's no evidence that that is how things were. On the 9th of January, 2017, Markeith D. Lloyd, a Moorish sovereign, shot an Orlando police officer multiple times when she confronted him outside a Walmart near the Pine Hills neighborhood in Florida. After shooting the Orlando officer, Lloyd fled the scene in his vehicle and ran over an Orange County Sheriff's deputy attempting to stop him. On July 17, 2016, Gavin Eugene Long, an alleged member of the Washita Nation, ambushed 6 police officers, killing 3 with an assault rifle in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. On April 5th, 2016, an improvised explosive device detonated at a residence in Columbus, Ohio. Alfonso D. Mobley Jr., a Moorish sovereign citizen, lost both hands in the explosion. Oof. Mobley and Roberto M. Innes Jr., who was not injured, were each charged with possession and manufacture of an explosive device, which they reportedly intended to use during a bank robbery. A bomb during a bank robbery. That's a shitty thing to use. Like, hey, I don't think bank robbery is a good thing to do in general. What a shock, I know. But if you're gonna do it, bombs are such a fucked up thing to use, right? It's funny because my D&D character really likes bombs, which is funny because the character's like, you know, they're chaotic good. They believe that you can use bombs for good, even though I don't really think that's the case in real life. But, like, bombs are so indiscriminate in their destruction, really not cool. Yeah, don't use bombs for your bank robbery. If you're gonna rob a bank, which I don't recommend, it's against the law, and you're gonna get caught. Much less maybe the moral implications, although you could argue, oh, it's all insured via the FDIC, blah, 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 whatever. Don't care. It's illegal, you're gonna get caught, don't do it. Not worth it. There also isn't a lot of cash in banks, typically. Most banks' cash nowadays is not liquid. They'll have some in the drawers, but you'll probably get away with like $1,000 to $5,000 tops, and I'm talking 5 on a good day in a bank that has a lot of walk-in traffic, so they have a lot in the drawers. Like, maybe you'll get away with that, but most likely you'll get like 10 to 15 years in prison, and it's just not worth it. And more if you're using guns, and especially more if you're using a fucking bomb. Do not try and rob a bank. If you're gonna... Nope, I'm not gonna say this. That might be TOS. There are better places to rob in terms of liquid cash if you want to. Banks are not the way to go. Cleanse for later. Thank you. Hello. On October 29th, 2015, Deontay Lanier, accused of first-degree murder in the 2012 death of Johnny P.A., declared himself a Moorish national, stating that the judge had no authority over him. So, that's an overview of Moorish citizens. Now we're going to watch some videos about them. They're very similar to sovereign citizens, but the arguments have a slightly different bent.